You've got a voice for radio, Rob.
Right.
You do.
Yeah, but the face is for TV. Okay, there's usually never a good way to introduce everybody on here.
Hello.
Are you? Well, hey everybody, Matthew Olmican here for Short Lane Egg Supply, and we haven't had one of these media podcasts in a while, and I'm like, to crank off the new year, the 2023 season, why don't we bring in two people, highly interesting people from a very interesting company, Rosen's, with Ashley and Rob. But you know what? Why don't you two formally introduce yourselves?
Thanks for having us, Matt. My name is Ashley Gaussman, and I work for Rosen's as a strategic account manager.
Rob Evans. I work for Rosen's as well. Thank you very much for having us.
You guys are so appreciative on the get-go. This is great.
Yep. I've been lucky enough to work for him for a couple of years, and always had a great relationship with the Short Lane crew, and very, very thankful for all the opportunities. So looking forward to the podcast.
Wow, you got high expectations here. You're looking forward to this. Have you watched these before?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Multiple times.
Replays, hashtag replay.
Actually, how long have you been in the industry? Chem industry or crop protection
I've
service?
Probably close to 15 years.
15 years,
Yeah.
Rob?
I think you can add 10 plus to that. So, yeah.
25?
25-ish plus.
30?
Yeah.
You're almost a 3-decader.
Yes.
Veteran.
So you've seen a lot.
You can see it too.
Expert
It's
level.
Whammo.
Well, you're taking great care of yourself. You don't look that old.
Thank you.
Well, Matt, I was carded yesterday. So I wanted to bring you two in today because biologicals and micronutrients far and wide is like, it's beyond a buzz term. Mm-hmm. It's beyond the hot topic. It is like, it's the biggest tool in the toolbox now. I remember when I came back to the family business, that was when biologicals were kind of like, they were out there. There was Quick Roots, inoculant, but they were that's where it was kind of limited to.
Yep.
Now, all of a sudden, it just exploded. And then you find out, like, all behind closed doors, the egg industry has been just like feeding billions of dollars into product research. And that was stuff they probably started like a decade and a half ago, maybe 2 decades worth of research. Now we're seeing all the results from that.
Yes.
So, to me as a retailer, or even if I talk as as a farmer, that's hard to navigate through of like, okay, there's all these bacteria things here. That's cool. And how do I know which products work and whatnot? But, you guys have a lot of great backing with the two things that I wanted to talk about today, and that was Foster SC and Taurus Sulfur, which Taurus Sulfur, that's more of the micronutrient side, whereas Foster is on the biological side.
Correct. Well, they're both kind of fall in that biological realm, and maybe we should start out with that first, Rob, and just kind of explain, what is a biological or a biostimulant? Those terms kind of get used interchangeably. We use them pretty loosely, and we have in the egg industry since the infancy stage. And to Matt, your point, we are in multiple generations now of a lot of these different products and the technologies that go into them based on, there's really no silver bullet when you ask, what is the best biological for my farm? There's different ways on positioning to get the max benefit out of that. But I think starting out, the first question a grower needs to ask with all of these options that are on the market, because there are a lot, what exactly is this? Is it a bacteria? Is it a amino acid? Is it an extract? What is it? Where was it derived from? Because a biological usually means a living thing. And a biostimulant would be a living thing that creates some sort of reaction, whether that's cell division, elongation. It's going to drive some sort of a reaction in the plant
Elongation?
Itself. Yep. So we could affect growth. We could affect, root stimulation, root growth, above ground. It really depends on how is it being positioned, what is the driver. Ask a lot of questions, I guess, is the long and short of it, to really kind of carve out what exactly you're comparing. Are they apples to apples?
Whereas your Foster product,
Yep.
super convenient. Mm-hmm. It lists it right out, all the different, because most of it's bacteria strains, right? Or is it all bacteria strains?
It is all bacteria strains. Yep, 8 different strains of bacteria.
And what is really cool too, and you don't see this on other products, because when I see the bacteria strains, I look those up and I'm like, okay, well, why did you pick this one specifically? You actually have the explanations right underneath each one.
Right.
And all of them have, you probably could create like this Venn diagram where they all overlap because they're doing similar things, but they all have a unique niche to them.
They do. And there's thousands of different strains of bacteria. There's bacteria strains we haven't even identified.
Well, more than thousands.
Well, thousands, yeah, hundreds and thousands, I'm sure. But really, to the strains that we use in Foster, there's 8 strains that are naturally derived from Midwest soils. That's where the parent stock is from. And bacteria, they divide, right? That's how they reproduce. And so we are always going back to that parent set of strains to derive the Foster from. It's no different than going to a brewery, right? If you go to a good brewery, they're using yeast that was probably handed down from generation after generation after generation. That's how they get their consistency. They don't make batch 1 and then pull the yeast off of batch 1 to make batch 2 and continue to kind of split and divide that way. They always go back to that parent yeast because that's what provides the consistency of the results in their brew. No different than Foster. We always go back to that parent stock to make sure we have good quality product that's consistent.
I never heard of that being compared to that. That is super interesting. So does this parent... I'm trying to picture what does this place look like where it's like, well, let's go back to the parent stock. Like, is it like just trash heaps? And there's just like, here they are, guys. I got to feed them more coffee grounds, please.
Yeah. And so, but to your point, that those 8 strains they are selected based on what they do in the soil to help mineralize and speed up that process to make the nutrients more available to the plant.
Stuff where it sounds like this Foster SC takes a more unique approach, correct?
Yep. There's a lot of different products in this.
Ashley's just taking the reins.
I'm sorry. Rob,
She's
cut me
nailing it.
off. Cut me
Was
off.
ready to like say something. I made eye contact.
I'm ready to say
Ashley
something,
comes
and then-
in and says, no, I got more to say.
She's doing fantastic.
Ask my husband how well that goes at home too.
Don't cut that part out.
Short Lane Media Podcast.
Bill watches
After
this too.
dark.
I'm so sorry, Bill.
Foster takes kind of like a unique approach where you're not just saying like, I'm going to take a bunch of bacteria that I took out of a shovel full out of Indiana and I'm just going to put a crap load more next to the seed.
Right. Yep. So like I said, they're specific. And when you look at bacterias in this biostimulant realm, right? That's where things get muddy. There are a lot of different products on the market right now. Some are very much focused specifically on fixing nitrogen. That's the bacteria that are in those products. It's usually 1 strain, maybe 2. They either fix the nitrogen in the soil or they fix it from atmospheric nitrogen, but that is their sole focus. Whereas with Foster, our focus is more on the entire NPK, micros, secondary nutrients, and works really good in conjunction with what you already have in your soil profile, helping to unlock those nutrients. Your organic matter, speed up mineralization, or manure is another great avenue too, where guys they have really good fertility. They have all this manure out there, but how do I make that more plant available? How do I speed up that reaction in the soil? And it's by putting a colony of good bacteria that are natural to the soil. It's here to replicate our soil and what you naturally find in our soil profiles to really help munch. They're going to be dividing and multiplying. Those bacteria need to feed on something. And there's a good symbiotic relationship with the bacteria that's in Foster that they feed on. They pull the nutrients out of the soil, out of the manure, out of the organic matter. They bring it to that plant root. The plant root takes it in, and we can even see this on a lot of the studies in the microscope. We can see the plant root take in the bacteria, strip off the nutrients, and then spit that bacteria back out, and the cycle starts all over again.
Say what?
Yeah.
Really?
It can extrude the bacteria back out into the soil, and it's that symbiotic relationship that really brings the value and the nutrients up into the plant.
Wow.
So one thing I will add, thank you.
You guys are so polite,
Ashley-
by the way.
Ashley she is nailing it.
When I have Wade on here, he just interrupts people.
Yep.
He says like, no, hold on now.
Yeah.
But you guys are very like, well, thank you. No, it's okay.
Lovely. Perfect.
Yeah.
So I'll give you like just the farmer perspective though, because I'll put the Rob Evans farmer hat on.
How many hats do you have, Rob? Because I've never seen you wear one.
I've asked Dawn. I've got a closet full. Yeah. Yep. But it's easy. So that's the other thing that I really, really like about Foster is, okay, so I'm trying to figure out how to get this on my soil to do the work. I've got liquid fertilizer in furrow. boom, it can mix right with my, whatever it is, 624-6, 918-9, 1034-0. It can go right in furrow. It can go 2x2. So if they're using a liquid fertilizer in a 2x2 situation, it can go there. It can go with your herbicide for an early pre-emerge or pre-plant application. So very easy to accommodate from getting it to the soil and doing the work like Ashley's talking about.
If you are wearing your farmer hat, Rob, do you want to just speak a little bit to, both Rob and I have used it personally in our own farming operations. Just speak a little bit to that and the ease of use of the Foster compared to other products.
Are you going to talk about the size of the bottle?
It's a good point. Yeah. So like Matthew says, comes in a little bottle which treats 40 acres. It's like an aspirin bottle. So I mean, you see it.
Not
and
to
you're
be
like,
confused with real aspirin bottles, but it does look like an aspirin bottle.
It does. And you think about, wow, how is that going to do the work that we are talking about? But it is crazy, from an increased root size to uniform emergence to better stalk health and feed in the factory above ground. But mixes easily with liquid fertilizer. So if you've got your fertilizer in a 1,000-gallon tank that you're taking to the field, dump it in. Mixes easy.
Yep.
If you want to mix it right on the planter, you can do it that way. If you want to mix it with 5 other things, no issues. I've checked that box. So
also, once you crack that aspirin bottle, Foster is super stable, which is a big deal because there's other products on the market. We start talking about living things, right?
Yeah, it's you're on the clock.
You are. It's like tick, tick,
As
tick,
soon as
tick,
that
tick.
seal is cracked. Yes.
Yes. Yep. And even if once the seal's cracked, once it hits your liquid starter fertilizer too, a lot of those products, it's tick, tick, tick. You have 4-8 hours, max. So if you get rained out,
Ideos meal.
yeah,
Yep.
but not with Foster. Not with Foster. That's
It just sits there?
Totally stable until it hits a carbon source in the soil. That's what activates it.
Now, when we talk about like farmers have to ask these questions. So like another question somebody would ask, like, is there like a best use method with this Foster? Like obviously this thing is very adaptable. Like I can tank mix it in almost anything. It can go in furrow, spray it or whatever. But you brought up a very good point. Soil temp and bacteria or fungi activity, or even like the larger stuff like worms and stuff, it is all temperature driven.
Right.
It's just like when it starts getting hot out, Matt's running around everywhere just because it's shorts weather.
Yep.
So does
shorts
that
and flip-flops like
yeah.
Yep.
So now is this something where like if somebody was putting this down, like let's say it's first half of May, cold and wet, does that stuff kind of just like sit in a stasis, wait to get waking back up once it starts warming up, or is that kind of like a lost opportunity?
I wouldn't say it's a lost opportunity. It just isn't going to multiply and divide as quickly. It's just, it's like it's slowed down. Once we hit that 55, 60 degrees in the soil temp, that's when things are rocking and rolling and
Then they pick back up.
They pick back up. Yep. And with Foster, because it's going to take time, it takes initial 24, 48 hours, that first life cycle, I mean, it's going to colonize in that soil profile, and it's going to continue to multiply and divide for probably the first 3 months. Then once you kind of hit that plateau, you're going to have some bacteria that are naturally senescing, dying off, still some that are coming online. And by month probably 5, 6 is when we're starting to just naturally senesce with that life cycle. So for us, I guess long short of it is we have a fairly short growing season here in northern Wisconsin. I would always recommend putting the Foster on early, whether it's you're spraying it on with a burn down pass, or you're spraying it on with your pre-emerge herbicide, or you're putting it on with the starter fertilizer or 2x2. Getting it out early so that we give the Foster the most chance to work and start colonizing is most important.
Give it a head start.
Exactly. Because if we're going to start talking June 15th or after,
Meh.
Yeah.
Yep.
As long as probably one thing to emphasize, like if we're going to do like a spray burn down, the best chem or the best contact to soil, right? Like you don't want to spray this necessarily over heavy residue. Or does it still find its way down?
It'll find its way down, no different than like a herbicide, right? I mean, when you want it into the soil, whether it's getting rained in a no-till situation, through the pore space in the soils, or we're getting actually physically into the soil via corn planter, that type of thing. But
I gotcha. Now, is there Obviously I could ask you about like, show me some yield data. Obviously it's there. The science makes a lot of sense. Do you find that this is more advantageous for like cash grain people, like the corn bean alteration people? Do you find this is more advantageous for the minimum till people where they're like, well, I'm not disturbing the soil as much, so I want to really, energize this soil profile? Or do you see this being really popular for people that manure management is number one, like big dairy systems?
Well, I kind of...
All three, Matt.
Yes.
I'd like to buy all three, Matt.
Is there a D option?
Yeah.
I just think of like, as we have discussions with growers around their individual farming operations, what you describe can be every single one of them. So we'll talk to a large dairy individual that is putting on X amount of gallons, and the ability to help break that down in a usable form for that crop to use it the first year almost comes up every time we talk to them.
Right.
Cash croppers that are dealing with a high amount of rented ground where it just doesn't make a lot of sense to pour in the amount of P and K like you would maybe on ground that you own. There's another example where we can help that scenario break that down in a faster period of time so the plant can use it again. And lastly, guys that are really trying to push yield where, okay, I'm investing this amount of money, whether it's $200 or $300 into fertilizer to really get the maximum yield goal. Here it works as well to really get that stuff to a form that plant can use in that year and turn it into yield.
Now, so this will be like a disclaimer, or this could be a dangerous question. You're not advocating that this is an input reduction mechanism, correct? This is more of like this is a nutrient efficiency mechanism.
You described it to a T. That's exactly our description.
And those are different.
Yes, they are.
Some people say that sounds the same, but
No, you'll never hear us say like, "Oh, drop your N by this or your P or K by this."
Rob is still shaking his head. No.
Right.
Yep. No.
I think too, kind of what Rob was alluding to is, so let's just say you have a grower that has really good fertility, his P and K are in check, we're high yield scenario. Even if he's putting maintenance down to maintain those soil levels, take FOSS for example. If he spreads 100 pounds of DAP, spring, fall, whatever, only 20%, 25% of that is actually plant available that first year. The rest of it gets tied up in the soil profile. And so that's where the Foster is really coming into play, is to help speed up that mineralization process and what's been locked up in the soil.
To kick that 20%'s ass.
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Where'd you find that information of like the whole, like only 25% of, or 75% is used and 25% is left behind?
A lot of university studies will show you what's
everybody
actually,
knows that.
It's just factual. But no, a lot of university studies will show you the efficacy of what's actually plant available that first year, what gets tied up in the soil profile. So,
yeah, absolutely. So I had to snicker a little bit when we first talked about like the package size, because if you do Google Foster SC and you pull up images, one image that you see reoccurring, and I don't know who came up with it, is they pair the box with a case of 12 gauge shotgun shells, like gonna go scatter blast some bacteria on my field.
Ready, aim, fire.
Yeah, I love it. Perfect. Anything else you want to say on that?
I don't think so. I think she nailed
Ashley kicked the shit out of that.
Yeah.
you can take Taurus Sulfur next.
I think we're just going to
do you think this is a trade-off?
Format. No, it's not. No, I like kind of just
No, I'm just stay here.
soaking it in over here. Like,
Rob's like a potted plant.
Yeah.
With that Foster, we were talking about like unlocking all the nutrient capabilities to get into this plant, or the plant's capabilities of getting these nutrients.
Correct.
So that is kind of a convenient segue for this other rock star product that you guys have, Taurus Sulfur. Even got a bull with horns on it on the front.
Yeah.
Whoever came up with that
Toro.
logo, that was pretty cool.
Toro.
Is that Toro?
Toro, yeah.
I like it. So now this Taurus Sulfur, how long have you guys had this thing?
It's younger, I would say, than Foster.
Yep. Year 3-ish,
Yes.
I believe.
Yep.
Well, this thing is really taken by storm. We've had immediate responses to this from the customers. So, and it seems that sulfur is like that. Sulfur is like what boron was with all the broadleaves, like the soybeans and alfalfa. What people were seeing that boron does. All of a sudden, they're seeing that sulfur is not just like awesome with grass, but sulfur is kind of awesome with everything.
Exactly. Yep.
So why? Well, but why though? So what does sulfur really do for a plant?
Well, I think it's important too to like rewind back. I don't know if we go back 6 or 7 or 10 years ago when a lot of our sulfur came in the form of rain. Before they started scrubbing all that out. Absolutely.
Acid rain?
Yes.
Yep.
Serious?
Absolutely. Ultimately, I think they believed it was pollution is what stopped it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So like a lot of the coal burning plants would put sulfur up into the atmosphere and then rain and down it would come.
Now that we're cleaning up the earth, we're not getting the sulfur. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it was a source for sulfur for sure.
It was definitely a free source.
Wow, that is a mine effort right there. Anyway, continue.
Yeah. And to your point, I mean, we think about the big ones in our area, corn, soybeans, alfalfa. All 3 of them require a fairly high amount of sulfur to really produce the maximum crop opportunity out there, especially the grass crops, where we look at corn and wheat, rye, oats. Those crops really, really, really need a big portion of sulfur to make it work. And we've also found that multiple applications tends to be a pretty big positive as well too. So whether you're putting sulfur down with ammonium sulfate or amthiol sulfate, am I saying that right? ATS?
Mm-hmm. ATS,
Amthiol.
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 That's why they call it ATS. Oh, man.
But the beauty with Taurus Sulfur, it's like an add-in for each one of those. So again, you're not going to hear Ashley and I ever say, put on 10 less pounds of your normal sulfur source. This is an add-in. This is a way of really amplifying the sulfur opportunity.
So now sulfur, you mentioned that before, like sulfur is it's instrumental for a lot of crops, but way more instrumental for grasses.
I just know we need 30-ish units of sulfur for corn. That's what we need, somewhere in that range.
But it's got to be a balance with like the nitrogen too, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yep.
And I think, just like nitrogen, sorry.
No, go
sorry,
ahead. You're
but
going
just
the exact
like,
same place.
yeah, just like nitrogen, you want to spoon feed the plant, right? Little here, little there. You're going to do some pre-plant, some side dress. You might even, some guys put some through the pivot, but really trying to layer that nitrogen application throughout the growing season versus just the old way of dumping it all
truck
on.
a bunch.
Yep. Same thing with sulfur. So you're probably putting a little AMS down up front or Kelsol. Now you're coming back with some ammonium sulfate or amthio as a side dress pass. And Taurus sulfur would help to also spoon feed that into the plant.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. So now this is just a high concentrated form of sulfur. This is what this is?
No. So what Taurus sulfur is first and foremost, it's a sulfur source. Obvious. It's 10% sulfur, and it is ammonium sulfate based. So you'll see a little bit of nitrogen in there as well. But being that it's AMS based, that sulfate form is what the plant can uptake and utilize immediately within the plant. So versus like, let's say an ATS, for example, amthio, that can take anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks before it goes through it, the entire chemical reaction required to become plant available. Even dry AMS still needs to hydrolyze in the soil before it can become plant available. So
hydrolyze?
Well, it's in a pellet, right? Mm-hmm. So got to get the pellet broke down so it can get taken in by the plant.
Or hydrolyzed.
Yeah.
Yep, full circle.
So, but that's I would say the biggest benefit of the sulfur piece is it's immediately plant available. So that's why spraying it foliar or putting it on 2x2. That's the other beauty is it's just so darn flexible. Taurus sulfur is. So there really is no sulfate or sulfur source you want to put in furrow. It gets way too hot, right? But you can run, if you have any guys that are running UAN, so 2832, 2x2 at planting, Taurus would be an excellent complement to that program if they want to have a little sulfur down up front. You can run it with UAN side dress. You can run it foliar. The beauty of Taurus sulfur is there are very few sulfur forms that you can run foliar. Well, I'm talking liquid, right? So like you don't want to spray ATS or amthio foliar. You burn the heck out of that plant.
But I heard
Crispy.
Yep. Scorched.
Yep. But with Taurus Sulfur, you won't see any of that phyto response. It's not going to burn the plant. You're not going to see it set back. It's very, very safe to the crop.
So what's the most effective way to get this Taurus Sulfur out for the biggest bang of your buck? Because you made it sound like you want to spoon feed this along. So does that mean like Taurus Sulfur should be seen as you complement this in your nitrogen program for the season? Or is this more of like, you know what, this is better targeted if it's a full year?
I would say it really depends on what fits that grower, what fits their farm. Are they running UAN? Are they dry? Are they running a fungicide? There's just so many ways to slice and dice this. I would say if you are going to spray it foliar, the most bang for your buck based on our data is on corn or soybeans, V3 time frame, because we're trying to build the factory at that point, right? The other piece would be with a fungicide pass, so closer to tassel time or at tassel, or R1 to R3 time on soybeans is where the other kind of best positioning is with Taurus. But let me just back up for a second, because I started out by first and foremost, it's a sulfur form, right? The second piece that sets Taurus apart really is this biostimulant. Kind of falls in that camp again of whenever you see this yield burst emblem on a product that's offered by Short Lane, that indicates that there is some sort of a biostimulant built into this brand. And for Taurus Sulfur, it has a pack of amino acids in it. And what that does is those amino acids are going to act like a big boost of energy. So that's why when we talk about positioning, we really try to be specific, especially with biostimulants, because I feel like our goal, and Rob can attest to this too, our goal is not just say, oh, biostimulants, this is a silver bullet, just wing it out there whenever you feel like it and cross your fingers.
And you get a stimulant, and you get a stimulant.
So, but really is to be very specific and ask yourself, what am I trying to do by applying this product, whether it's Taurus Sulfur, Foster, or any biostimulant, is to say, what exactly am I trying to stimulate in the plant at this specific timing? And that's why, like I said, that's number one, that'll give you your most success, most bang for your buck on a return on investment. But with Taurus, we're really trying to build that factory on the early season and drive plant growth, retain flowers that are going to eventually turn to pods. And so we're really trying to give that plant a burst of energy, or maybe it's with a herbicide pass at that time frame. Maybe you're spraying it with Enlist, or you're spraying it with, any of your corn herbicides. Partnering it in that tank mix with that burst of energy, it really helps the plant metabolize what you just sprayed it with, right?
So like you can get rid of that, what is it in beans? The glyphosate hangover or herbicide hangover? Or droopy.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and I mean, no matter what we spray on the plant, there's still that unseen metabolizing that has to go on. That plant has to take in the product, metabolize it through before it can continue moving forward, right? Giving that burst of amino acids, the building block of proteins that jumpstart that process, helps to keep that growth happening, keep that plant moving forward.
So there's amino acids in this Taurus Sulfur.
Correct.
Yes.
That's the biological or biostimulant.
That's the
piece.
stimulant part.
The stimulant, yes.
That's the beauty of. So I have to give Rosen's a lot of credit for this, because they've used this philosophy of putting a stimulant and a nutritional in one package and getting a 1 + 1 = 3. So stimulating growth and you have nutrition hand in hand, it just naturally goes together. And we've seen a lot of wins from that, and Taurus Sulfur is one of them, where those two acting together, we see phenomenal benefits for the plant.
A 1 + 1 = 3 scenario.
Yes.
That's probably not Colby math, but
yeah.
No, it is exactly Colby math. Well, that's what I mean. It's like you're trying to trick the system. You're encouraging that plant to up its
have a
processes.
Response. Yep.
To have a response, so it uptakes something that it's going to benefit from, so that doesn't lag behind.
Yep, but it needs that food source to help with that stimulation, right? With that burst of energy.
Yep.
Yeah. You were mentioning before, like maybe spray corn later on. So like there was at one point, I thought I read that the sulfur need for corn at V12 or after V12 is like 59%.
Yes, it's huge.
That's a huge number.
Yes.
It's a huge number. And that kind of goes back to our conversation here a few minutes ago when we said, what you're doing with AMS and your program that you already have in play is great. But what happens if we get a bunch of rain and you're flushing some of the sulfur or you're flushing your nitrogen? It's just a simple, and we can show this slide on the podcast, just a simple It's just a simple uptake chart from the University of Illinois, really showing your macros and secondary nutrients specifically on when throughout the growing cycle, corn and soybeans, that those nutrients are most taken up. And for corn, it's close to 60% is required after those late leaf stages. So as you're building up to that V13, 14, 15, 2 tassel timing, that and beyond is where close to 60% of your sulfur needs are required by the plant. How many of us are putting AMS on out there at that time?
Nobody.
No, nobody. Right, yeah, because you can't, right? You just physically can't. So that's where we're saying you're out there with Veltima or Preexer or, you name the brand. Putting Taurus Sulfur in there will really help to drive and give that plant that immediate need for the sulfur it's looking for.
So then it sounds like this doesn't necessarily have to hit the ground, right? It can just hit the plant, or it wants to hit the plant.
Both.
Right?
Both. Yeah. So the sulfur has activity, soil activity, or you can get it on foliar. But there again, it's all about getting it on and into the plant. And so the beauty of Taurus Sulfur, there's a delivery system in that, just like all of the Rosen's brands. Our ability to stay on that leaf and get into the leaf is super critical for that efficacy component.
Mm-hmm. Now, and then this thing is like take mix ready for a lot of things, or is there additional resources where somebody could be like, well, I know I should do a jar test, but like, is there kind of like a list of stuff where it's
how many things have you mixed it with,
Rob? We've scrubbed this out pretty well and mixed it with 7, 8, 9 different compounds, both herbicides, fungicides, you name it, and mixability is good.
Where would you be using this? Or have been using this?
I do think it's important. Like when Ashley and I will get with growers and have this discussion, it's very similar to almost like a water hemp discussion. And where I'm going with that is, this day and age with water hemp, we try to talk about like overlapping residuals. So we really want to have the opportunity out there where there's never going to be a water hemp that comes through the ground. Similar with sulfur, where we're looking for overlapping sulfur opportunities. So there's never a sulfur shortage out there for that plant. So depending on what I'm doing, if I'm putting AMS down early, I'd look to spray some Taurus Sulfur when my corn is, V3 to V5. In soybeans, another great opportunity is, okay, we put down an initial herbicide pass real early in the soybean's life, maybe pre-emerge, and then we come back 20 to 25 days later to give us that overlapping residual. Perfect time to have Taurus Sulfur in there as well.
So you're doing your darndest to spread out your sulfur program and not be like, nope, I'm right here. I'm dumping this in. It's going in the ground at planting, and I'm not going to worry about it later.
Yep.
Right.
You want to maximize your effort.
Yep.
You want to maximize your input.
Absolutely.
And spread it out.
But even on a soybean plant, you start having guys that want to strive for high yields on soybeans. They look to, I need to supplement nitrogen, and I need to look at supplementing some more sulfur on that bean crop. And so on that uptake chart from the University of Illinois that we referenced earlier,
there it is again.
For soybeans this time, 60% is required after R1.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a huge amount. And how many guys are putting AMS? There's a decent, amount of guys that are starting to put sulfur down on their soybean crop. But there again, are you putting it down foliar or late? Probably not. Yep. But you probably are spraying Preexer or Revitech.
That's what I mean.
It rides in the tank really nice.
That seems to be like just because of the stature of like beans, and then you're more likely going out there with a fungicide pass anyway. That would just make a lot of sense.
Yep.
And I think an interesting photo that we could throw in here is that photo that Craig took last year. Yeah. Phenomenal side by side of where just straight nitrogen was put on wheat and then nitrogen plus Taurus Sulfur, and it was to the line.
Look at that line. Right? That's in the picture.
No, it was right out back here at the
Short Lane Ranch.
Well, we talked a lot about this stuff. Is there anything else?
We merely provided some information. The true experts are the people at Short Lane Ag.
Correct.
And their ability to truly put this together for the growers that they work with.
Wow.
We highly appreciate.
Put away the grease gun.
Yep.
But we're very grateful to work with you guys and partner with you and keep bringing you new things and new technologies that are going to benefit the growers here in Wisconsin.
Well, we're only as effective as the kind of products and especially the reps that we get to work with to get us the resources, information that we need. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys did great.
Thank you.
That was fun.